You are listening to the IoT For All Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Chacon, and on today's episode, we have Art Miller, the VP and Global Head of Retail IoT at Qualcomm Technologies. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Qualcomm, they are a leading innovator in wireless technologies in the IoT space. They do a ton of great things for the IoT industry. So check them out if you're unfamiliar, but I'm sure most of you have heard of them before and have maybe potentially even worked together. So on this episode, it's a really good one. We talk about the retail space as it connects to IoT. So what does the retail landscape look like in IoT? How's it evolved over the years? What technologies are playing a role? Those kinds of things. We also talk about how the pandemic actually impacted the retail space and potentially how IoT can help solve some problems that were realized and started to be experienced during the pandemic that have now bubbled to the top as something that companies and these organizations want to focus now on. We also dive into the supply chain and logistics side of retail and how IoT is playing a role in really supporting that area. And then also we kind of, wind that down with talking about the future of what retail and IoT look like together, the power they can kind of do together, and what digital transformation at a high level looks like in the retail space. So overall, great episode. But before we get into that episode, if any of you out there are looking to enter the fast-growing and profitable IoT market, but don't know where to start, check out our sponsor, Leverage. Leverage's IoT solutions development platform provides everything you need to create turnkey IoT products that you can white label and resell under your own brand. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. And without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the IoT For All podcast. Welcome, Art, to the IoT For All show. Thanks for being here this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Let's go ahead and start off by having you introduce yourself to our audience, a little background information, anything you think is relevant to get some context as to who to listening to.
Sure. All right. It's Art Miller. I run our retail IoT business at Qualcomm. For those of you who don't know Qualcomm, we're known more for the mobile side in smartphones and other such devices. And I'm part of our IoT business group, which takes assets originally developed or intended for mobile usage into adjacent markets. And I specifically look after technology that goes into retail.
Fantastic. And for those who may be a little bit unfamiliar with Qualcomm, at a high level, we'll talk about kind of what the focus is of the organization and how you all fit into the IoT space.
Sure. All right. So as I mentioned, we do well in the mobile space. We have a very broad portfolio, primarily focused on cellular connectivity, local area or personal area networks, heavily focused on compute and security. So three pillars that we build everything on, which is connectivity, compute, and security, all highly integrated, power efficient solutions. And we've taken some of these mobile assets and start going into IoT. So if you think of specifically in retail and IoT, if you look at enterprise access points in retail environments, the likes of, let's say, Cisco or Meraki, or if you look at industrial handhelds being used by a store associate from Zebra or Honeywell, or even if you're scanning to find out what a price is in a lane in a store, those are typically often powered by Qualcomm.
Okay.
If you start looking at newer use cases, you might see us in smart cameras or in self-checkout or alternative forms of checkout or payment.
Fantastic. Well, that kind of answered my next two questions, which we're talking through some of your role in kind of the retail space. But is there anything you wanted to kind of elaborate on when it comes to retail specifically, or any use cases that you think would kind of be good to highlight, kind of the power and the focus that you all have?
Sure. I think that, use cases today, because if you look at retail, it hasn't changed much over time. But the use cases we're looking at are as things become automated, the use of robotics, whether it's to bring things from the back of the store to the front of the store, or to use drones for delivery, or autonomous vehicles for delivery. Those are some of the advanced technologies we're using. If you look at an associate in store, I mentioned the handheld, but maybe some augmented reality glasses to interact with the environment around them to make them more efficient while picking or stocking. And then when you start looking at the consumer, interacting with the consumer at the shelf edge, potentially from either advertising or just more information at the shelf edge, or engaging them, creating relevant recommendations. So that's those are some areas that we're currently in, and we continue to evolve.
Fantastic. So Let's back up for a second and talk about retail IoT and kind of the overall landscape from your
Sure.
perspective. So, what does it kind of look like for those who may be unfamiliar with IoT and retail, kind of how it works together?
Mhm.
And how has it kind of evolved over the last number of years to get to a point today?
Sure. So IoT and retail, I guess if done properly, none of us will notice it, right? We'll just have better experiences in store. So we believe technology will be deployed to help improve our experiences, consumers and associates experience working in the store, or improve operational efficiencies. So it's about digitizing everything in the store, eventually digitizing everything in the store. So we have kind of this replica of, in physical space of what we can do online. I think that's the key thing. So whether or not that's done with computer vision or with connecting individual devices, I think you'll see technology in kind of connecting everything, creating this what do you call it? This connected intelligent edge where we know where everything is. We know how people are behaving in an environment, and then being able to dynamically impact their experience in the store. So, if done properly, it should be seamless. But you'll start seeing things like maybe smart card implementations, or
Okay.
you've seen of unattended retail, maybe
Right.
just workout formats. So it'll scale from everything as simple as engaging someone at the shelf edge to a full-blown autonomous experience, right? When you walk in.
Right. And from a retailer's perspective, what are the biggest priorities that they have, and how are the technologies today kind of helping play a role there?
Sure. I think some of the priorities today, obviously, there was, go back a decade, there was this threat of online. So there was some attention paid. Hey, we need to do something in retail to change, but kind of there was never necessarily enough motivation to do anything. COVID kind of accelerated that, where there was a shortage of labor. There were changes in behavior with us as consumers of, buy online, pick up at curb, or maybe pick up in store or have delivered to your home. So a lot of the things we're hearing from retailers today are, keeping track of inventory, keeping inventory on the shelves, accurate count of things in the supply chain because of those different modalities. If they're sending someone out to pick on our behalf and
Hmm.
it's not on the shelf, even though it said it was in inventory, now
Yep.
it leads to an unhappy customer because I ordered it. It said it was
Yep.
there. I don't get
Sure.
it. I get a poor
Sure.
substitution, something else. So,
Um, and let me ask this, and this is kind of unique to the times that we're in now. How have you seen things like the pandemic
mhm.
influence the retail industry as a whole? And how is technology and IoT technology specifically playing a role in kind of as retail comes back, or how has it kind of improved the experience throughout the pandemic, or I guess, in a sense, connected to that?
Sure, sure. Yeah. And so I mentioned a couple headwinds, right? It's more difficult to find someone to work. Maybe there's
Right.
potentially more regulations. So simple things of knowing how many people are in the store, technology can do that. If
Okay.
having, let's say, automating checkout, that's something you can do where with limited resources, maybe they're assisting customers instead of
Mm.
just sitting at a checkout lane. So we've seen a lot of that, and then obviously the picking is a big deal. So technology to make picking more efficient, either through augmented reality glasses, edge
Mm.
shelf displays that blink when an associate's picking something to make sure they're getting the right thing, or even just the full automation of these physical spaces turning into um, partially autonomous picking
Okay.
for delivery or pickup, and then experience. So
Mm.
it's we as shoppers now, our behaviors change. Things that we would touch before we don't want to touch, you know,
Sure.
things that, so that it's changed, it's forced different modalities with checkout or
Okay.
just in-store behavior.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into what I wanted to kind of spread into next, is more about the in-store experience
Sure.
and the effort that retailers are going to making that more relevant and interesting, to drive people in versus potentially purchasing online and kind of battling that. How do you all see that kind of evolving, or how has it evolved, and the role you all play in that space?
Yeah, I think there's going to be many things happening over time. I think the simple thing of digitizing the edge, something as simple as automating pricing so that, we can see dynamic pricing, or pricing online matches that's in physical space. So
Sure.
digitizing things in physical space, understanding how people are moving through the store, maybe through loyalty rewards or through applications or scan and go or smart carts, we now know someone's physical basket in that space. So now retailers can start to create these physical online experiences. When we shop online, we don't mind recommendations because typically they're relevant because they're based on our basket or our behavior. So if we can start translating that into physical space, it'll make for a more rewarding trip to the store. And to be honest with you, a lot of people want to go back to the store. We see a lot of demand there. At the same time, no one wants to give up their delivery or their pickup options either. So I guess it'll depend on mood of consumers. But the key thing here is to start to align these physical and online experiences. So it's what we experience online or in physical space is more similar to what we're used to online in these times.
And do you kind of see a certain kinds of retail establishments, based on what they're selling, kind of
Mhm.
gravitate more towards these technologies as opposed to other types of stores?
Sure. Well, we've been engaged with some of the bigger retailers. I know at our investor day, we had mentioned we're working with Walmart. Doug McMillan was kind enough
Mm,
to mention our collaboration with them.
okay.
When you look at the essential stores, the ones that are most heavily utilized or most depended upon in times like COVID, those are the ones we see really embracing technology or
Sure.
wanting to get more technology because they're heavily dependent on the labor shortages, the increase in wages, the increase in
Hmm.
product costs. It's more heavily burdened for them. So fixing supply chain, helping the associate be more efficient, and at the same time improving experience to encourage people back into the store, I think are all major priorities for the big retailers, the essential retailers.
So you mentioned supply chain, which is a topic I wanted to
Mhm.
get into anyways. So supply chain logistics, kind of that whole area is super popular right now. It's a very hot topic to
Mhm.
understand, talk about, and discuss how technology is playing a role now, how it has in the past, and what we kind of predict it will do in the future. How do you see kind of IoT technologies and maybe some things that you all have done impact the supply chain, improve the supply chain and logistics side of things to help businesses on the retail side?
Sure. I think it's a good question. So I think that the good news about Qualcomm, our roots are kind of our foundation was more in supply chain. We actually did OmniTracks back in the
Okay.
80s to track trucks across the country, pre
Wow.
cell phones and the ability to do that. So if you
Sure.
look, we've been one of our core businesses at Qualcomm has always been this tracking goods or services or goods or trucks or
Mm,
logistics. So we've been engaged for multiple decades. What's surprising at this point is even if we know where a truck is, we don't necessarily know what's on it. Even if we know something's been delivered to a store, we don't know if it was the right delivery.
mhm.
So as we engage with some retailers, it's interesting to hear that they may not know where things are, and which may not have been a problem in the past because we would walk in and we'd see something on a shelf and take it or not. But
Right.
now we expect to see inventory in real time on our phone, online. So I think the visibility into supply chain is going to be more important than ever. And it's going to be a
Mhm.
combination of technologies. It could be cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. It could be, RFID, computer vision. It's a combination of all of these technologies working together to so the retailer simply has to ask, how much do I have and where is it? Today, that question is nearly impossible. And if to get that level of insight, they spend a lot of money
Sure.
manually figuring that out, or after the fact figuring out they didn't have something. So
Right.
I think just that pure visibility, the very simple question, how much do I have? Where is it? Is it in the proper condition? Is
Mhm.
it in the right place? Are going to be key. And I think we're in a unique position with our portfolio, our connectivity portfolio, our computer vision portfolio, to kind of help enable that. And we are engaged with a few folks right now.
Yeah, it's been interesting to kind of monitor the evolution of technology over the last number of years, especially as you're thinking about different connectivity options that are out there, prices and the costs for those going down, making solutions more affordable for companies to adopt, and seeing what it's enabling in tons of different industries, but in supply chain logistics, and as we've also mentioned in the retail space, it's quite fascinating to see what's been able to be enabled
Mhm.
with the combination of these technologies and working with organizations who really understand it end to end and allow the companies that are working, or the companies that are shipping the products, the companies that are ordering the products, not have to worry as much as they did before. And there's a huge value for that for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, we believe so too. And that's one of the reasons we're looking at that space very closely and investing heavily there.
So let me ask you, forward thinking kind of through the rest of this year into the next couple years, what does the future of retail look like through your eyes? And kind of how does IoT and digital transformation as a whole really play a role in getting there?
Yeah, I think the key thing, and we mentioned it a couple times, you hit on it. It's going to be more about experience. You know, it's
Okay.
it's going to be walking into a store and experiencing things. Maybe even not even walking out with it, but having it delivered home. But it's having a relevant experience. It can't be just technology bombarding us with things we're not interested in. It's going to be about the technology monitoring us in the store, looking at the store and making real-time relevant recommendations so that it's a meaningful experience to us in the store. At the same time, we do believe there's going to be uh, things where there's going to be multiple modes of checkout, right? There's
Hmm.
going to be the ability to walk in and walk out. There's going to be
Right.
unattended lanes. There's going to be smart carts or scan and go. But we believe retailers are going to have to embrace what consumers want at this point. Um, and I think that we're looking for different experiences based on different people and different modes to engage. So, that's one thing. The other thing is we're looking over the horizon on, payment paradigms, right? It's not a lot has changed with cards over time. NFC has become much more popular payment method through COVID. No one wants to touch anything again, but is there really a reason for us ever to pull out a card? Is there ever a reason for us
Mm,
not to just be able to pay any device anywhere in the store that's trusted? So we're
right.
looking over the horizon with different payment technologies, or I mentioned earlier robotics. We're
Sure.
heavily investing. We're on our sixth generation robotics platform. We actually have we're in the Mars drone with Qualcomm chips. So
Nice.
pretty sure if we can handle that environment, we can certainly help deliver packages either with autonomous vehicles or with drones. So I think a lot of things are going to change. What actually sticks is to be determined, but the good news is we're in a unique position to kind of step back and look at how these things
Yeah.
will interact.
And how do you think this influences the job market in the retail space? Influencing like the likes of cashiers and people who stock the shelves, people who go around and um, work with customers to help them find what they're looking for. How does these technologies kind of, whether it's complementing, replacing, what do you kind of see that kind of evolving into?
I see it as complementary, to be honest,
Okay.
and hopefully making a much better work environment. Let's say
Hmm.
you're the person responsible for putting toothbrushes on a shelf on peg hooks, and you walk over and there's soft, medium, and hard bristles and multi-pack and different things. It all looks the same.
Right.
So now, and it's if you were to walk up and look down with your augmented reality glasses or your industrial handheld and scan something, and you look
Hmm.
up and something's flashing exactly where it should go, or you see in your eyes exactly where it should be placed, that's a much more enjoyable experience than this nightmare of figuring out where something belongs. So I think there's things we can do to make the employee or the associate's journey or daily activities much more efficient, and then enable them to, free them up to actually sell, maybe become an expert in a particular area where they can advise people who are trying to shop instead of just struggling on picking or stocking something. And then at the front, from a cashier perspective, it's more about choices again. There will likely be attended lanes still, because my parents, if they walk into a store without
Of course.
someone at the
Of
register,
course.
they're going to walk
Right.
out. So I think
Right.
there's going to be a need for that, but in a very high turnover environment, I think it's going to allow people who want to stay there and want to be there to do jobs that are meaningful to them. I don't see it, replacing. I see it putting people in a position to be either experts or do something that they feel is meaningful in that environment.
Yeah, I've kind of always viewed it as like for me when I go into a store, let's say going to Costco, and I actually prefer the self checkout because it's faster and get more people through, and it makes going to Costco on the weekends much more enjoyable than it
Sure,
was before. But
sure.
what I think that allows companies to do is like you kind of already talked about is train their employees up to be product experts and help increase the likelihood of sales by
Mhm.
being able to pay more attention to the actual customer. Now, of course, some people just like to be left alone and do their own thing, but there are, uh, I guess, there are stores that really could benefit from being more of a hands-on experience and
Absolutely.
providing different kinds of opportunity for people to learn about stuff. Like if you go to Target, the good chances you probably know what you're looking for, and there's definitely technology based applications that would help them, but it's there are unique, I think, opportunities for technology to even go further with that experience. And I think building that skill set within individuals is how this technology expands the potential for these jobs, as opposed to feeling like it's just going to replace them and it's just going to be run by robots or or some other kind of way of being done.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, well, this has been a great conversation. I actually haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about retail IoT for a while, so I really appreciate it. I wanted to ask you before we wrap up here, when you all talk to companies in the retail space, where is the biggest area that you get pushback? As far as is it a cost thing? Is it a implementation integration type thing? Is it a just lack of knowledge and understanding how the technology would work and benefit them? Is it ROI? Like where do you kind of get the most pushback, and where do you see the biggest challenges of these technologies being adopted more widespread in the retail space?
Sure. I think all of the above. You
Okay.
you hit on a lot of the points, but it depends on the retailer. Some retailers are very tech savvy and have embraced technology, and they have IT departments and engineers to support deployment. They're a little more, you know, forward looking or not so daunted by the bringing technology in. There's also the small regional, let's say grocers or smaller format stores that they're overwhelmed when they see the picture of what can happen. So there's been some things we believe. We're big proponents of standardization. We think standardizing, you know, air interfaces or standardizing technologies that read things or digitize things will not just be beneficial to Qualcomm, but beneficial to the entire ecosystem. So I know there has in the past, some of the reluctance was simply, ROI. And then others were concerned about, am I going to make the wrong decision by picking a proprietary implementation from a particular vendor?
Sure.
So some of the ways we're looking at it is how do we reduce the cost of technology
Okay.
and then have that technology address multiple ROIs. So if you look
Okay.
at, I'll use shelf labels. I like that one because it's very
Mhm.
easy to understand. There's a return on investment for just digitizing the paper label. You don't have to send someone out to replace paper labels. Then if you look at that, I talked about picking efficiency. Now your picking
Mhm.
efficiency potentially goes up. Your interaction with the customer. So now you're talking there's maybe 2 or 3 or 4 ROIs for particular technology that go. So technology pricing has come down, labor
Mhm.
pricing has gone up, and at the same time now there's other use cases being applied to what used to be seen as a single mode, and I think that's happening everywhere. So now there's the overwhelming task of what do I choose? And we've worked ourselves into a unique position because we don't sell anything to retailers, but we talk to retailers about what's possible with technology. So we sit back and look at everything, talk about use cases more than we talk about technology. And then we bring in one of our 13,000 IoT customers to deploy technology in those retail spaces.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I think we're in a unique position to calm people down, tell them what's possible and how things will interact, and just what we start at the top. What use case is most important to you, and then talk through how they could potentially enable that with technology that we're behind.
Fantastic. So as we kind of finish up, tell our audience what they should be on the lookout for coming out of Qualcomm in the next number of months, and at the same time where they can stay in touch, how they can learn more, and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. Okay. So what's upcoming? Oh man. So we're taking some of our premium phones, the smartphone chips, things that
Okay.
you'll see in the premium smartphone space, and driving it into applications such as self checkout or smart carts or unattended retail. So it's actually fun to go in with something that was intended to be held in your hand and then do a use case that used to be a PC or a server in the back room. It's fun to go through that. So you'll see some of that. I'm very excited about the changes in checkout. Whether it's self checkout or smart card I mentioned, or unattended. We're investing a lot there. And then over the horizon, it's we're trying to rethink how payment happens. So we're investing heavily there in computer vision. But everything we're doing is all about experience for the customer, the associate, or improving operational efficiency. So I think you're going to see some pretty cool applications with mobile devices that weren't intended to be there originally. And then if you want to find out more about what we're doing or keep track, if you just go to qualcomm.com/retail, you can do that, or look me up on LinkedIn and drop me a note.
Fantastic. Well, Art, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time. I'd love to kind of keep an eye on the space and see how things are going, and have you back to kind of talk further about the evolution of the technology, how it's being applied, where we're seeing kind of the biggest opportunities and things like that later this year. So thanks again for being here.
All right, perfect. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks again for watching that episode of the IoT For All podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to hit the bell notification so you get the latest episodes as soon as they become available. Other than that, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.